This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Richard.
All right, I'm back again. I'm Richard, and I'm an addict and alcoholic. I'd like to first start off and say, when I came to this program, I had a lot of back problems. I couldn't get my job back, couldn't get my girlfriend back, and I couldn't get my car back. And those are the things that got me here, you know. I'd also like to tell the newcomers that I was 90 pounds and a full head of hair when I came to this program. And if you want what I have today, you should really reconsider it, you know. Because they told me when I was new, if you ain't getting fat, you ain't staying sober, you know. So you're looking at 25 years of sobriety here right now. And so my story basically starts, I started out in like the Long Beach area, and my folks moved out to the San Fernando Valley, and they couldn't afford the extra $50 a month to live in Encino, so we moved to Chatsworth. I was the first Jew in Chatsworth, and there was no Northridge in those days. And my first day at school, they were throwing pennies at a kid, and I asked somebody why they were throwing pennies at him, and they said, because he's a kike. And I said, well, what's a kike? And they go, a Jew. And I said, what's a Jew? And I go, you mean he's Jewish? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm Jewish. And they started throwing pennies at me. And then, true story. And, you know, it was a big fist fight and a lot of blood, and it was all mine. I lost, you know, and I hated my parents for moving me there. And I hated being there, you know, and I didn't know why. You know, because it was the first time I was out of a realm and I was new and I didn't fit in. And I knew, that's when I made the decision that I got to find a way to, you know, to be socially, you know, or to be accepted and not get beaten up at school. So, you know, thank God, you know, the 7th grade and 8th grade came around, there was junior high. And in 1969, there was a concert at Devonshire Downs. It was called Newport 69, and it was the West Coast version of Woodstock. Now, I went to that concert because of the fact that I was listening to KHJ AM, and I didn't even know there was an FM, and I was listening to groups like Three Dog Night, and I told Chuck End the story, and the Grassroots, and there were people like Jimi Hendrix, and Spirit, and Edgar Winter and Johnny Winter, and Chamber Brothers, and Steppenwolf, and I mean, all these phenomenal bands, you know, and color organs and everything, and the girls looked hot. They were all wearing buckskin, you know, things with a letter and a tie right here, but there's nothing underneath. And, you know, and for a guy going through puberty, that was the greatest sight in the world, you know. And, you know, and people, they were setting bonfires, and they had these little, you know, huts and all this stuff, you know, they're selling their stuff, and people were walking around with Boda bags, you know, because that's what you used to drink out. You know, and the drink in those days was Boone Farm Strawberry Hill, and Yago Sangria, you know, and Colt 45, you know. Because we're in the valley, we didn't have Old English, you know, so. And, you know, and that was it, you know, they were doing that. And I was watching people, and they'd take oranges, and they would take syringes with vodka and squeeze them into the oranges. And you had a built-in screwdriver, man, you know, with all vitamin C in it on top of it. And, you know, people were getting high, and, you know, they had the guys that had, like, the rolling paper, you know, all the different types of papers, and they had, like, strawberry, and vanilla, and chocolate, and licorice, and ones with wires inside, ones in, you know, and, you know, and I was finding out about pot. You know, and, you know, in those days it was like homegrown and Acapulco Gold and Panama Red, and then you know, and then became Colombian, and then Sensimian and Purple Seedless, and Buddha sticks, Thai sticks, Alaskan Thunderfuck, you know, every different type of, you know, pot you could think of. And I was at this one little, you know, thing where this guy was blowing these glass bongs, you know. And it was a bong that, you know, the water would go, you take a hit and it'd go through the water, then it'd come up, and then it'd go through the water again, and it was a double chamber water bong, the guy said. And I said, and I just looking at that, and I said, and this guy says, you know, have you ever smoked through a double chamber water bong before? And I said, no, I've never smoked through a double chamber water bong before. And he says, well, then you've never been high, you know. So the guy opens up a little pouch, put some pot in it, I light it up, I bought 2. You know, because that's what you are as an addict and an alcoholic. You know, I once heard somebody share that if there was a cure for alcoholism and a pill, I'd take 2. You know, it's just, you know, double up on it. So, So that was it, and I was doing the drinking and all that stuff, and I was, and you're able to make friends in school. And one thing I loved about at that time of my life is that you'd share. Everybody would share and they'd stick around with each other, and that was the beauty. And you have conversations and meet people on the whole thing. So going ahead, eventually, what happened is that I met this guy, Joseph the Russian, and, and at the time, the disco era was coming in, and, he walks around with a spoon, and there's a pink Peruvian flake and all this kind of stuff. And I was with this guy, and he told me that he pulls out this, it looks like a little Tootsie Roll with a stamp on the outside of it. And I said, and I asked him what it was. He goes, it's opium. And I said, wow. I said, how is it? And the guy says, you got to try it. And I asked him, I said, is it addicting? And he says, only if you keep smoking it. So, you put it on a spoon, you light it underneath, and then you inhale and you do that. And I love that stuff. That was my favorite because hash made me cough and all that stuff. So then eventually what happened is they had that Iranian crisis. The Shah was overthrown, That's when he wrote that book, How I Ran Before I Ran. So the Shah left, and you couldn't get the stuff anymore. So what happened is that, and I couldn't find it, and it was impossible to get. So, life's back, and, you're snorting, and, and you're smoking pot, and you're drinking, and, the whole thing. And so I meet this, the same guy that turned me on to the opium. He comes over to my friend's house with my roommate, and my roommate's dealing heavy. And he has some coke, and he has this guy coming over, and he's going to show us how to freebase. And this is like 12 of us. And I'm here to tell you, 10 of us are in these rooms right now. I was the first one, But so we do that. So, because I told the guy how much I really missed opium. He says, well, then you got to try it. You got to try this stuff. In the old days, they'd run through acetone and ether, and, so we're doing it the old-fashioned way. And then, of course, I asked him the question, is it addicting? And he said, only if you keep doing it, So, and I kept doing it. So we smoked it, and it was great. And then you know what happened? People stopped hanging around. As soon as they got their coke, they were gone. And of course, you're doing twice as much drinking on that stuff. Because it's like you're trying to get that perfect, hit. And and in the old days, we didn't have what you guys have today. These propane things, We had to use Bacardi 151 and a cloth and a pair of pliers to light the fucking pipe with, because wooden matches wouldn't work in those days, or sulfur matches. So of course you're drinking, Diet Coke and Bacardi 151, to cut the edge. And one of my stories of when I was actually drinking, maybe I used to like to drink Grand Marnier, and I used to like to light it, heat the glass, because when you freebase or drugs, I like the flame. So, so I need a snifter glass. So I go and I'm drinking that, and they go to a midnight showing at the Roxy Theater of Billy Vera and the Beaters, and it's and it's a 2-drink minimum, and they come and they drop you off your 2 drinks, and then you never see the cocktail waitress again. And when you're doing coke and everything, you need the drink to go with it. So I had a $20 bill, and that was a lot in those days. I tore it in half. I gave her half. I said, here, you just keep the drinks coming. We'll get the tip, and you get the other half of the 20, right? So I'm, lighting the drink, and I'm talking with my hands as I'm doing up here. And we're sitting at a long table, and I knock the glass over, and the blue flame goes across 6 or 7 people and down some people's laps. And all I know is these 2 big hands come and pick me up, and they throw me outside. So now I'm outside of the Roxy at 1 o'clock in the morning. No cell phones in those days. My friends don't come out to see me, and I got a half a $20 bill in my pocket, And that's fucked up, and I should have known then. That's a bottom, So I continued to keep doing what I was doing. And, eventually I had a girlfriend, and we were living in the canals, and actually a house in the canals, not in the fucking canal, Because I always hear people say, yeah, I came to California, I always wanted to live on the beach. And there I was, underneath the Santa Monica Pier, living on the beach. you know. So we're over there, and then back in the older days, and it's full of all those ducks or whatever it is, you know. And she invented the big gulp glass before it was invented. She would get that, you know, bottle of, you know, Almandine or Red Mountain, you know, it's a half gallon, and she'd make 2 drinks, you know, 2 glasses. She only had 2 glasses every night of wine. Finished the whole bottle, you know, the big gulp, you know. And then if she smoked pot or whatever, she'd get paranoid, and then she'd be like telling me that the ducks are laughing at her, you know, they're going wah 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 wah, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here, fucking my high, you know. You know, and she doesn't want to go to AA, so she, you know, so she calls this guy, and he, you know, she's in the entertainment business, so she calls this guy, and this guy says, you know, we're starting this meeting called Cocaine Addicts for Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, so because, you know, in the early days of AA, it was like you could only identify it with one thing, and it's not the way, or at least how lucky we are today out here, you know, we accept them all. So I went to check out the meeting, and I saw a lot of celebrities, and people were sharing about how they were bouncing checks on their chauffeurs and all this shit. And I'm like, I don't fucking need to be here. You know, I don't have that problem, you know. You know, so I kept doing what I was doing, and, you know, but I would check out the meetings once in a while. And I started to come in, and then, you know, I had friends that had problems. Say, you know, you should check out one of those meetings, you know. And I remember going to 26 and Broadway on a rainy night. And, you know, everything I thought an AA meeting was going to be, that's what it was at 26 and Broadway. They all had their overcoats on and shit, you know. And I was like, you know, it was exactly what I thought it was. And those days they'd make you, you know, you could smoke. Even this room had a big, you know, metal thing they used to zap, and this half of the room could smoke and this half couldn't. Like, it makes a fucking difference, you know. You know. And you'd lose, you know, or they'd say, like, just that section there is non-smoking, and the smokers had it, you know. So, I would do it. And I remember going into my first meeting, and I remember the prayer I said, and I share this with people all the time. My first prayer was, please, God, don't let me be one of them. You know? And I still come to this room and go, please, God, don't let me be one of them. You know, but I am a proud card-carrying member. I am very, very, you know, graciously happy to be part of this group, this fellowship. So I would go, and so eventually what it was is, you know, I started going into meetings, but I wouldn't tell anybody how much time I had, and I didn't get a big book, and I didn't get a sponsor, because I didn't want to have to commit to the program, you know. And, you know, I'd be at the Baja Cantina saying, okay, I'm not going to do drugs, I'm just going to drink, you know, and I'm at the Baja Cantina, you know, going down on the margaritas because I couldn't even pick them up, you know, and you know, and saying I'm not an alcoholic, I'm just an addict, you know, whatever it is. So eventually what happened is you know, I kind of surrendered. And somebody had said to me, Richard, there's 3 ways to work this program: your way, the wrong way, and the way it's suggested in the big book. So, and he says, and your way and the wrong way are identically the same, you know. So I decided to do it as a big one. So I got a sponsor, but I hate, you know, I'm sorry to say that I got this guy who had like about a year, because I was at this newer fellowship program, and he was sponsoring like 20 people, so I figured, and he had a year, I figured he knew everything. So I asked him to be my sponsor. And I'm going to share from the 3rd edition of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there was a page called, there was a section called Dr. Addict Alcoholic, and it talks about acceptance. So, you know, so the back problems, right? My girlfriend leaves me, you know. I had that love-hate relationship, you know, can't stand being with you, can't stand being without you. And just to define that, which I've shared at meetings before, if you ever seen a freeway chase, you know, and then they pop the guy's tires and he's driving on the rims and it's sparking, that's my relationships. It's you and me, baby, till the wheels fall off and then we drive it on the rims, you know. And, you know, so it's a toxic relationship, you know. So, so, you know, it's just like, so I tell the guy about the girl, she left me. I can't believe it, she left me. So he says, well, read 448 to 452, get on your knees, you know, take a hot shower, look in the mirror and say, you love yourself. And I said, but what's that have to do with get my girlfriend back? You're my sponsor, you're supposed to get my, you know, help her. Tell her that she should stick around for me, you know. Yeah, mind of a newcomer. So, and then, of course, they're coming to repossess the car because I lost my job. And he tells me 440, 452, get on my knees, pray pray, look in the mirror, and say I love myself. And then I told him that they're taking my job, they're firing me, and he told me 452. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to a meeting and drink and say you shouldn't be sponsoring people, because they talk about steps. That means you haven't told me a fucking thing about these things, these steps or whatever going on. So you know what I'm talking about. Mark K. Okay, so with that, I'm almost on my way to go get loaded, or give up on this fellowship in the meeting, and I hear some guy share, and he tells a story, because the thing is I would listen to the differences so that I could justify why I didn't need to be here, and one day I listened to the similarities, and this guy told my story. He told something that I hadn't told anybody, and he had the exact same thing. And so I asked him if he'd be my sponsor, and he, and this guy's like 6'2", and and I'm just looking down at my feet, and I just hear like a very deep laugh, and then I look up, and he gives me a hug, and he says, you know what, I probably need you more than you need me, and I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. So what I did is I asked him, first thing I asked him was, how many people are you sponsoring? And he says, well, I got this one guy who's got like 4 years, and another guy's got a couple of years. He says, why? He said, will you do me a favor and not sponsor anybody else for a while? Because you know what? I'm afraid to ask for help. And I was like number 20 of the 20 guys he was sponsoring, the other guy sponsoring. And I told him what happened, and he said, fine. And I got to tell you the truth, I swear to God, when I was about 3 years sober, he says, somebody asked me to sponsor them. I said, I got to talk to baby Richard first and see if it's okay. And I told him, tell the guy no, go get another one, I said, no, it's okay. But he better not go to the same meetings I go to, so, because I wanted to share what he taught me. I didn't want this guy sharing the same stuff. So, he started to take me through the book and that stuff. And I remember when we were doing the 4-step, I was afraid about doing the 4-step because everybody, was talking about how they're doing like these autobiographies, 20 or 30 pages or whatever it is. And then they go to the beach and burn it up. And I know people who do that way. So I asked my sponsor after we did it, I said, are we going to set it on fire and burn it? And he said, here. He says, where's your book? Where's it say to do that in the book? I said, well, everybody else tells me that from the podium. And he says, and he turns a few more pages and it says, here's our, your list of amends. We refer to the list that we made when we took inventory. So, so he helped me with that to try to explain it. I want to get into the service part, before I run out of time. So there was a meeting that was moving, and I wanted to be secretary, all right, because I was going to bring a few friends in and try to become secretary of the meeting. It was moving from one meeting to another meeting room. And the guy who was the former secretary decided he was going to have one of his guys he sponsored, who was one of those 10 that I got loaded with doing freebase with, and he was going to be the secretary, and they were going to change the format. So I said, okay, well, I want to be treasurer, and I had about 14 months at the time, and the guy says, you have to have 2 years to be treasurer, because you might go out and get loaded with the money. And I said, bullshit, where does it say that? So then I said, okay, well, I want to be the literature person. Nope, got to have 18 months for that, because you're going to be handling money and all that stuff. He said, you can have the food commitment. And I said, and you know what I told him. So what I did is I went to my sponsor crying, saying, the sacred tradition says for a group purposes with an ultimate authority, loving God, he may express himself a group conscious. Our leaders are but trusted servants who do not govern. And my sponsor just started laughing, and he said, Richard, you know what? This program's about love and service. And he said, let me tell you something. You know who I respect? The girl that works the hotlines on a Sunday when everybody else wants to be at the beach. He says, I respect at a meeting? The guy who does the cleanup, because he stays after the meeting and talks to the newcomer for the ones that are afraid to go home and they need someone to talk to. He says, I respect the person who does the coffee commitment or the setup. They get there early and they talk to the newcomer who's been waiting for a meeting and needs someone to talk to. He says, I respect the person who does the literature. They give the literature to the newcomer or the big book, and they write their name in the big book and say, hey, give me a call sometime if you want. And here's a list of meetings I go to. He says, he says, secretaries is an ego trip. You got an ego, Richard. You'll be a secretary sometime, but it's all about the service. And he says, so I heard that message, and I went down and I worked the hotlines. And I worked the hotlines for 8 years, every Wednesday. And I got to tell you, there is nothing that's more powerful, better than reading that big book, than working a hotline and talking to somebody or a family member there. You do not want to get loaded after working that commitment, And that was the greatest commitment. And there was a couple of people that I met from answering the hotline. Somebody came up to me with 28 days and said, is your name Richard? Do you remember talking to me and my mom and blah, blah, blah? And I said, yeah. She says, I have 28 days today. I watched her take a 30-day chip, a 60-day chip, a 90-day chip, a 6-month chip, 9-month chip, and I gave her a birthday cake. And I got to tell you, free base and alcohol does not give you a rush like that does. It's the greatest feeling in the world, because this is a program of action. It's not, people can talk the talk. I've seen the gurus do the talking. I've seen the big book thumpers quote shit, and that's great. The only thing they show me is they got a better memory than me, But if you don't walk like you talk, it doesn't matter. The only thing that I learned to memorize in the big book was page 456 of the 3rd edition, because I used to call my sponsor being whacked out of my mind, and he'd tell me to go, said, read page 456 and get to a meeting. And page 456 is a blank page. I can quote that page. It says, do exactly what it says and get to a meeting. Now, so what happened is that meeting, so I called my friend up, I said, hey, I'm taking the cleanup commitment. And he goes, why? And I said, none of your business, So I went and I took the cleanup, and of course people came up to me and told me, if you got a resentment, go get a big book and a pot of coffee and start your own meeting. So my sponsor hands me the AA directory, okay? And he says, you know what this is? I said, yeah, it's a meeting directory. He says, no, it isn't. It's a list of resentments. That's how meetings get started here. He says, Los Angeles has over 2,500 fucking resentments, man, because that's how we start meetings. I don't like the speaker. I don't like the secretary. I don't like the format. I need one on Tuesday night. I need one at 7:30. I need one at 5:30. I need one at 3 in the afternoon, whatever it is. So A is full of resentments. They say resentments will get you loaded. Resentments will make a lot of meetings, man. That's what they do. So I go back to that meeting, to that secretary, and I told him I want that commitment. So, so I'm at that meeting, and it's the first meeting starts, and they asked if there's any announcements, and oh, by the way, my sponsor told me it's better be comfortable than to be right. Okay, Richard, it's better to be comfortable than to be right. Now, that's easy to say, but my head said I got to be right at this meeting. So I go, and any announcements, raise my hand, I quote the second tradition, and I said we should have elections here. So the guy who's already up there, somebody nominates him, and the whole room seconds it. So then my friend goes, you want me to nominate you now? And it's like, shh, don't say nothing. So I point to this one guy who I know has quite a few years in the program, and the poor guy, he just wanted to go to a meeting, So I nominate him, and nobody seconds it, So now he feels totally unloved, and the whole room hates me, So that's it, so I had that cleanup commitment for a while. And I want you to know what else I did at that meeting. I sat in the back row, we used to call it the Dare Me to Get Sober section. I used to call it Inventories Taken Here section. So, and I used to think, at meetings when they have speakers, they should hold the cue card, the cards, and, 1 through 10, score them like they do in a fucking, you suck, get a 3. So I'm sitting in the back there, and there's this newcomer, this guy with a Rubik's Cube, and he's shaking. And I'm like, look at that fucking newcomer. Look at that newcomer shake, man. I bet she makes a mean scrambled egg. Look at him go, man. And then, I'm telling everybody that, crack. And I go, hey, I bet you James Bond would love that guy. You make his martini shaking, not stirred. Look at him go, So I'm sitting back there, and the meeting starts, and then, of course, they're giving out birthday cakes. And the guy stands up for a cake for 9 years. And the reason why, and he shares that he used a synthetic heroin that left him with Parkinson's disease. So now the whole back row's looking at me going, Richard, that's fucked up, man. Swear to God, true story, And, I eat those sides. I mean, humble pie. I know what it tastes like, man. You know, they're all looking at me and go, man, that was bad, you know? And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I like to tell you I don't judge anymore, but I do. But I only tell one person. You know, like I'm sitting over here, I'd be next to Mike. I go, I bet you they can't say fucking anonymity, you know, because we put the newcomers up here for a buck, right? You know, but I didn't tell the rest of you guys that, you know, because I don't want to find out that they're really stutterers or whatever like that. And they go, Richard, that was fucked up, you know. So, so I keep it down to. Keep it low, man. You know, so that was it. So, you know, pretty much that's what I was doing, and I've been very active in service. And I think that that's the thing that's been the most important. You know, the meetings and here, and if you guys saw me here, I would always stay after the meeting standing up because it's the parking lot meeting that keeps me sober. And it's you guys that keep me sober. See, I have friends that have, you know, as much time as I do and less. And, you know, a lot of them have lost their sponsors either because of age and, you know, or they passed away or moved or whatever it is. And they'll say to me, you know, hey, Richard, you know what? I think I should go get myself a new sponsor. And I'd say, screw that. Go get yourself a newcomer. A newcomer is going to make you work a program more than a sponsor. You get a sponsor, you're not going to call them. You know, you get a newcomer, they make you work a program. You know, what they do is they call you and you're living in the valley and they ask you if you could come meet them at a meeting Wednesday night out in the valley. And you know how long it takes to get over that fucking hill to go to the valley. And then you get there and he's not there, you know. And you want to kill him, you know. You know. And I call my sponsor, I'm not working with newcomers anymore, blah, blah, blah. He goes, you know, every 12-step call I've ever been on has been successful. And I go, everybody you sponsor got sober? He says, no, every 12-step call I've been on has been successful. I didn't drink or use over the situation. You know, and that's what it really is. You know, that's what the program has done. You know, and like I said, you know, because newcomers are going to make you go through the steps. They're going to say, I'm only an alcoholic. Why can't I smoke pot? Or I'm only an addict. Why can't I drink? You know, and you have to explain it to them, and you know, well, I don't understand the steps, you know, or the whole thing, and that's the best part. My sponsor used to make me read step 10 in the 12 and 12. And he says, I want you to go read about yourself in there. And it talks about me, you know, that constructive criticism. I'm really trying to put somebody down so I could be better, you know, and the big shotism and all those things. You know, and those are the things that come up, you know, in sobriety, you know, and it's hard. And it also gets hard when you have time because you're dealing with life and we don't have the option to get loaded. And sometimes suicide sounds like a, you know, the solution. You know, I'll go to a meeting and I'm afraid to share because I think somebody else needs to share more than me. You know, they'll be like, you know, is there, you know, you go to one of those participation meetings and they'll say, is there a burning desire? And you're in so much pain because some relationship just kicked your butt all over the place. You know, and you're really pain and you're going, yeah, I really don't want people to know I'm in this much pain. So this is their burning desire, and you're just about to raise your hand, and the newcomer raises their hand, and you go, this newcomer really needs to share. And the newcomer goes, you know, the program really works. I got 30 days, and thanks for letting me share. And you go, you know what? I'm going to kill that fucking newcomer, man. You know, he goes, because I'm in pain. He found God, and he's happy, you know, and I'm having a hard time with it. So the bottom line is it's been an absolutely wonderful adventure in sobriety, and it continues to be that way. You know, I think that the last thing I want to share about is that I had an opportunity, my sponsor had introduced me to Chuck C., and he was, you know, on his way out. And, you know, one of Chuck's stories that he tells is the one about that down at Laguna Beach when he would speak every holiday time, you know, he would go to speak, and there was this, you know, new guy, homeless and the old, you know, and he reeked, and nobody would sit next to him. You know, there were like seats in front of him, behind him, and on either side. And he was shaking so bad he couldn't light his cigarette. So this lady comes over, takes a cigarette out of her mouth, puts it in her mouth, takes it out of his mouth, puts it in her mouth, lights it, gets it going, and gives it back to the guy. So Chuck sees back the following year, and the guy's wearing a jacket and tie, and he's taking a cake for a year. And Chuck's going, you know, this is the beauty of this, you know. It's just one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic. You know, they get the message, they hear it, you know. And the guy gets up there and he starts crying, and he thanks the woman that did, you know, that lit the cigarette for him because nobody had ever did that for him before. See, it isn't the talk, it's the walk, you know. And that's the way it works around here, you know. I don't have the power to get you loaded. And I don't have the, you know, and I don't have the power to get you sober, but my actions can push you out of these rooms, you know, and I don't want to be the one that pushes you away, you know. And Michelle, thank you so much. In the room, thank you so much for letting me be the secretary last year. I had a blast, and you better come to my birthday party, or I'll hunt you down. Come get you. Thanks for letting me share.